Salams and welcome to a brand new episode of Daily Debrief coming to you from the People's Dispatch studios in New Delhi. On the show today, we're talking about Japan's new defense strategy, or at least the beginnings of it. We look at the latest from the Jan 6th hearings in the United States and what's happening on the Turkey-Iraq border. Japan has released an alarmist white paper approved by the cabinet of Prime Minister Fumio Kishida and announced by Minister of Defense Nobuo Kishi. The paper is apparently the result of the efforts of the ruling LDP's Research Commission on Security and National Defense Division panel, led by former Defense Minister Itsunori Onodera, and it outlines an aggressive spending plan to expand Japan's military, all ground, air as well as sea forces, to counter what it calls greater threats posed by Russia, China and North Korea. It's called Russia an aggressor nation and accused China of unilaterally changing or attempting to change the status quo by coercion in the East and South China Seas. The defense minister is asking Parliament for more spending money, and the country is reviewing its pacifist constitution. Anish joins us now. Anish, good to have you back in studio. What do you make of the language as well as the intent of what's called the Defense of Japan Booklet 2022?
Yes, so the alarmist, as you said, that's a very good describer of what the white paper has laid out, because at this point it is trying to rake up the existing disputes that it has with not just China, but also with the two Koreas. And this is definitely a shift in the way it is trying to view its strategic position in East Asia, but also to look at its passions and, its ambitions in the region as a power player. So in that sense, we can look at Japan trying to move away from its very historically pacifist or neutral stand that it usually played, even though diplomatically it would obviously side with the US. On the military aspects of it, it always tried to stay away from any kind of confrontations as much as possible. We can see this in the context of, as you pointed out, an attempt by the ruling government right now to move away from its historically pacifist stand, which is something of an assurance that it had given to the world after losing the Second World War and after, understanding its role in the massive destruction it has caused in Asia and the Pacific. So this is sort of trying to go back to those, or trying to withdraw itself from those assurances that it has given the world, because we often forget that Japan was one of those imperialist nations. It actually conquered a large part of Asia and has committed serious crimes against humanity, war crimes, and it was found guilty of many of them. And the legacy of which still haunts many of these nations. So it really going back to that sort of an era where it's pacifist era makes it a problematic gesture. And this white paper really shows that it is trying to take this part very seriously.
Anish, so what is the wider context? Obviously, this is in a regional context, and there's of course Japan and its allies, but there's must have been responses from the establishments in China, in the Koreas, as well as Russia.
Yes, definitely. China has come out very strongly against it. Obviously, it is looking at Japan's attempts to put Taiwan as at the center of its focus when it comes to dealing with China. And if you look at it, it has actually doubled its mention of Taiwan in this new white paper compared to what it did in earlier years. And also try to use this as some sort of a possible invasion, supposed invasion on the lines of the Ukraine-Russian war that is happening. So the sort of escalating hostility in the cross-strait relations. Obviously, there are tensions right now, but these are matters that needs to be solved by the whatever government exists in Taiwan and Russia and China, and not to be interfered upon by Japan and US, obviously. So this is something that China has reiterated. There is also mention of the Senkaku Islands dispute, the disputed islands between China and not only the People's Republic of China, but the self-proclaimed Republic of China that governs Taiwan. So the dispute still exists to a great extent. It is the islands host a large source of natural gas and oil. So obviously it is going to be a major strategic location and another possible flashpoint in any kind of tensions in the future, if not confrontations and wars. So Japan trying to use these conflicts and disputes as to paint China as an aggressor nation is historically problematic, and this is especially pronounced when you look at how South Korea has responded to the white paper, because the Dokdo Islands, which are now under the control of South Korea, but still claimed by Japan, is a problematic case in point. We have to look at the fact that Japan had annexed this island during its imperialist period, and it was regained by the Koreas with the help of the allied nations. So Japan now doubling down on those claims is becoming problematic. As I said, it is trying to probably use the old imperialist claims on parts of Asia, East China, and the Pacific to boast a certain kind of nationalistic fervor. So obviously, and this is obviously done to move away from the government's failings in stemming the COVID-19 pandemic right now. Any kind of its economic performances haven't been that great. It is solely reliant on China's the trade with China to actually. We've seen the recent growth, or growth in manufacturing sector was primarily because of China. Its dependence on China and how China's opening up actually helped it. So in those cases, it's trying to undermine these facts that it is actually not very well equipped to govern itself or the nation, and the government is trying to move attention from that by using these nationalistic fervor, which has obviously helped other kind of right-wing governments around the world. So this is sort of that we are looking at Japan's political system going to that direction. It is alarming for the rest of the world, and obviously this white paper is an indication to that.
Yeah. And of course, at the end of it, also asking for more money to expand its military.
Exactly, like we are looking at their claims of doubling its expenditure. Japan right now stands at 9th, and that could bring to about $100 billion for a country like Japan is sorely unnecessary. But obviously, this is the direction it's going towards.
Right. Stick around, because we are talking a bit of showbiz next, kind of. There was a central question that US legislators investigating the events of January 6, 2021 in Washington, D.C. were trying to answer in their latest public hearing. What was Donald Trump up to while the riot was unfolding at the United States Capitol? This was a public hearing broadcast live on national TV across America yesterday. And some of the headlines are in typical Hollywood manner, calling it another blockbuster. Over the past few weeks, the House panel has been trying to unravel, in the manner of a mini-series, how Trump was the centerpiece of a sustained effort to overturn the results of the 2020 elections, which ended in riot. Not peaceful protesters being attacked by armed police, but armed and organized groups storming the Capitol building. Anish, what are the highlights from the latest episode? Sorry, I pushed it too far.
No, I mean, the way it is being conducted obviously will give you feels of a reality show to begin with, so we can't really deny much of that. But yeah, so some of the findings they found, which are not really new or that revelatory, considering what we knew happened on the day itself. But yeah, so if you look at the findings of the latest 8th hearing that has happened so far, it shows, it only vindicates what we knew or understood from what happened on the day itself, and not really wasn't that revelatory to begin with. It found that Trump failed to act for nearly 3 hours of the entire event. It was pretty much at the last minute that he actually took any kind of decision to send help to the the security team over there, but at the same time, or even call for peace and for the crowd to go back and not do what they were doing. It also found that he actually refused to call senior officials even when he was asked to do that. Senior officials not only in his government but also in the military, in the security department, to actually take actions that would be necessary to actually stem this crisis. So we are looking at an overall profile and considering what we knew happened in the last 7 hearings. It actually isn't out of the order from what he was doing in the other parts before the events and also during the event. There was also obviously a failure on his part to control the crowd that he was instigating. And this is something that we knew from the beginning. Actually, if you remember what happened on January 6, 2021, he was actually instigating the crowd. He was instigating them by saying that the Congress is trying to validate a fraudulent election, which he knew, and this has been vindicated in previous hearings, which he knew were false, but he nevertheless continued to repeat them in an attack on the system, the electoral system, and also people's mandates. Obviously, it's how the system runs and how valid it is in showing the democratic will of the people is a different
story
question altogether. But that was not his problem. His problem was definitely the fact that he lost, and not the fact that the system was whatever corrupted or did not reflect the mandate of the people. And in the overall picture, we have to remember this only shows how Trump ran his administration, which was basically just making claims after claims and not really delivering, either delivering on them or substantiating them.
So what happens next, Anish?
So we will see the hearings to continue in the next coming months. But over time, we are looking at, on the one hand, the Republicans are trying to use this and paint it as some kind of witch hunt of Donald Trump, and use this. And this is a very specific section within the Republican Party, the more right-wing, the more populist, demagogic sections in the party that have always supported who are now trying to use that to assert their dominance within the party. And they are kind of leading in that. On the other hand, the Democrats are trying to use it and milk it as a sort of political mileage over the Republicans, but are not really doing anything to stem the actual problem. They're only targeting this one person. If you look at the fact that there were right-wing groups that were involved, like Proud Boys or Oath Keepers, and who are still, working and organizing freely without any kind of consequences for their actions, it shows that there is a lack of seriousness on the part of the Democrats to actually arrest this sort of white supremacist tendency that is growing in the United States. And that is the root of the problem. Donald Trump was merely exploiting that, we have to remember.
Using it.
Yeah, he was exploiting it and using it for his own benefit, political benefits. But the real problem lies in the ground, where you need to really organize and work towards, which is barely happening from the side of the Democrats.
And that's the scary part of this entire process. We make jokes, but of course, I mean, it is very real and very scary. And finally, thousands of Iraqis took to the streets on Wednesday, that's the 20th of July, after hearing of the death of 9 people from Turkish artillery fire from across the border. Nearly 24 people were also injured in the attack. The attack was condemned by both the Iraqi government as well as opposition forces, and they demanded the immediate withdrawal of all Turkish forces from the country. Abdul joins us now for more on this story. Abdul, what's the latest? How is this? The protests are taking place. What's going on?
Basically, this is since April this year, Turkey has invaded northern Iraq. What we call Iraqi Kurdistan is an autonomous region within Iraq, claiming that this is the base for PKK, the Kurdish Worker Party, which is basically declared as a terrorist organization in Turkey. And Turkey blames that they are using this region as a base to carry out attacks inside. And because of that, there has been a large-scale displacement inside Iraqi Kurdistan. It has also led to the killing of various Iraqi citizens. This is the attack which we are talking about is the second such attack within 4 days or 5 days, within a week. And in the last attack, 5 people were killed in the car near Mosul. This is in Dohuk, which is a kind of tourist region.
Right.
A large number of tourists from other parts of Iraq come to this place basically to have nature sightseeing. And while the tourists were there, Turkish artillery fired on them, and 9 of them were killed, and around 24 people were injured in this attack. Of course, this led to widespread protests throughout Iraq. Iraqi government demanded after the attack that the Turkish forces should withdraw from country and Turkey should apologize. They also threatened that this will be taken to the United Nations Security Council and so on and so forth. This basically leads to the larger question of whether the invasion of Iraq is in coordination with the Iraqi government or not. Because Turkey had claimed that this was in coordination with the Iraqi government, Iraqi authorities of Iraqi Kurdistan. But the reaction of the Iraqi government and the people in Iraq shows that this was not in coordination and this was full-fledged invasion of the Iraqi territories.
All right, thanks very much, Abdul. That's all we have on this episode of Daily Debrief. From Abdul, myself and the entire People's Dispatch team, thank you very much for watching. For more details on all of these stories, you can of course head to our website, peoplesdispatch.org. And don't forget to give us a follow on whatever social media platform you use for updates on the work we do. We'll be back tomorrow for our end of the week episode. Until then, stay safe. Goodbye.